Okay, so welcome everybody once again to another talk show episode. And this time we have Dominion Eromosele with us, right? I'll be talking about gaming in Nigeria. We'll start with Dominion. Basically, Dominion, who are you? Where are you from? What schools did you attend? Do you identify?
Okay. What was the last question? Sorry.
I said, do you identify as a Nigerian?
Oh, okay. For the sake of public reference, yes, I identify as a Nigerian. We can talk later in private about any other thing. But hello, everyone. Yes, my name is Dominion. Most people just call me Dom. And who am I? Very weird question, but I'll make it professional. So, I am a game designer and community manager. Right, I'm a community manager currently for a company called Carry1st, and hopefully we get to talk about Carry1st and the work we're doing later on. But yes, professionally, I'm a game designer and a community manager. Both my parents are from Nigeria, Edo State to be precise. So technically, yes, I'm from Edo State, although I've never even lived there or anything like that. So
Wow.
yes,
Where have you lived? Which state?
I was born in Warri, actually, Warri in Delta, and
Okay.
then I moved over to Port Harcourt, and I've lived in Port Harcourt for most of my life.
Um,
So yeah, so it's not like I consider myself more a Port Harcourt person than an Edo person, but I know the area more. I won't get lost in Port Harcourt. Let me put it that way.
yeah.
And schools I attended. So I graduated from the University of Port Harcourt. Attending presently really no school, maybe just schools like Udacity and Google, and Google because they have courses all the time that I take, but I'm
Yeah.
not really in any university or anything of that sort
Mhm.
right now. And yeah, I already said I publicly identify as a Nigerian, so I think that answers all the questions.
Yeah. What about like maybe secondary school boarding day? I don't know why I like asking this question, but I do.
Oh no, it's cool. I mean, people get to talk about themselves a bit, but so I did change schools a lot when I was in like my secondary level.
Mm-hmm.
I did change a lot of schools. I actually started with a boarding school in Benin. That was one of my parents' attempts to like take me back home and get to experience the the vibe of being from Edo State and everything. But I only stayed there for one term. After
Wow.
one term, I was moved back to Port Harcourt to like do regular day school and everything. So that was one school in Benin. Then I had another school in Port Harcourt. I stayed there for a while. That was like 2 years or 3 years, and I was moved to a separate school again. So the schooling I did in Port Harcourt when I came back from Benin was Victory International High School, and then I was moved to another school called the International Secondary School. It was a school in the university, in River State University. So
Okay.
that was just how I moved around. And then I ended up ending my senior year in a school called Eastern Comprehensive High School. So yes, I did move around a lot, but those are the various schools I attended.
Oh, nice. Excellent. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe one day we'll go back and we'll see if there's a correlation between leading in spaces or in ecosystems and attending boarding school. Because
Oh wow,
that would be good data, a
yeah,
reference.
yeah, yeah. It should be. Most people believe that folks who go to boarding school tend to be tougher or just more survival oriented, But anything happens, you can really change anyway. It just depends on the culture of the school you're in, and not just whether it's boarding or day.
Yeah, and I don't know, with the reputation of boarding schools present in Nigeria,
Exactly, it's weird.
yeah. Okay, so before we go to game designing, I'll just ask you like about your identity. Say you identify as a Nigerian. So what do you think about being a very conscious youth in the 21st century? I don't know if you're conscious though, but like being a youth, a youthful Nigerian in
Mhm.
the 21st century, in this kind of situation, in this kind of era, taking into account everything and nothing.
Everything and nothing. I like that. But it's tough. It's tough. People need to get this. And the problem with certain situations is that their effects are so slow. Their biggest effects rather are so slow that we don't realize them yet. And that's a Nigerian case. You see, a lot of times Nigerians have a character to pay attention to the very fast changes and ignore the slower and more deadly changes. So we
Mm-hmm.
can scream when there's an increase in the price of fuel, right? But you don't see as much engagement to the fact that students have been at home for 5 months. What we
Mm-hmm.
don't realize is that a 50 naira increase in the price of fuel is nothing, zero, compared to what it means to keep students at home for even just 1 year. Because we don't see the effects of having the country's educational base away from education for a full year, which means for a full year, the talent that should have been supplied to the Nigerian job market is going to be missing. For a full year, the innovative powerhouse of the nation is going to be missing, but we don't ever see that. We think it's just going to cover up later, they will learn and things of those sorts. So it's tough because if you look at Nigeria today, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, youths like you and I will be married, but maybe we'll have siblings in all parts of the country, or
Mm-hmm.
not even just the country, all parts of the world that we haven't seen for years because everybody had to quote unquote japa.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's just tough thinking about Nigeria, which is why I don't do it a lot. I just sit back, work, and where I can make changes, I make changes. But all I know is it's tough when you look at what the future holds for us. Very tough.
Okay. And Port Harcourt, right, with the suits. I know like some people in Port Harcourt, and it's just I can't even begin to imagine how frustrated people, because literally you're seeing the money, right, just across
Mm-hmm.
some streets flowing out,
Mm-hmm.
flowing in, the production, the upstream production processes, right, occurring
Mm-hmm.
close to you. And then somehow there's no will to stop the actual like heavy cost on human life, right, in the form of
Mm-hmm.
suits. And also I probably credit to Burna Boy for lauding it, right, in his
Oh
new
yeah,
album.
whiskey was amazing.
So I don't know if you want to talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, I do. I before I talk about it, I do have to say, and this is a disclaimer, but I'm sure everybody who lives in Port Harcourt can attest to this. It has significantly gotten better in the past few months. Just to say, right, in the past month, it has improved greatly. It's not as bad as it used to be, and that's because at a point the governor actually went on this quote unquote rampage and was offering money for folks who could point out some of these dealerships and these places, and then the police would actually go there and scatter it. There are questions about the ethical nature via which these businesses were being dismantled. Because I remember there was a story of a local government chairman who, in order to show that they were definitely bringing down these illegal establishments for refining, decided to round up all the jars or drums of oil and crude and dispose them into the river. And the stupid, yes, it's such a stupid story because we are complaining about one environmental hazard and you put off an even greater environmental hazard, and it was done to show that this problem was being handled and tackled, and he proudly made sure it was covered by the media, but the backlash quickly sent them back into their hiding. So yes, in one way or the other it has gotten better. I for one know the length at which, or the amount of time I would spend to clean up my house or even wash my windows, but it's much better now. And but it is still a frustrating issue because it's still there. You're more prone to health issues because the sneezing, the presence of these things in your nostrils, in your air conditioning, and everywhere. So it's still a big issue, and there are people who are still moving these materials illegally, but they can't be stopped because at the end of the day, sometimes the money they make goes into the hands of certain people who are in power to make these decisions. So it's still a frustrating thing.
Yeah. And I think a necessary case study or a necessary, research study might have to be the influence, right? Taking a period of probably like 20 years or 25
Mm-hmm.
in Port Harcourt and just analyzing the influence of, okay, people whose childhood was in Port Harcourt pre-Sooth, and then, children that are being born now, right? And just examine
Exactly.
influence on health, on
Mm-hmm.
survival, on habits. I think it's very interesting because it's scary to think about a child growing up in this kind of condition. Like how,
Mm-hmm.
because you have no defense system basically, right? And even if you have to wear a mask, like children were not born to be wearing masks at such a young age.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, it's a sad story, and I hope that a solution will be found ASAP.
Mm.
To
Yeah, we all do. The solution has been found. What you should hope for is that the solution is implemented ASAP.
oh, okay. All right, Dominion. So you are a game designer. So for people who still using BlackBerry, what does that mean?
I'm going to make it like really quick because I know we spent a lot of time on the entire earlier part, talking about politics and all of that. So we'll just try and run through this. But being a game designer basically means you get to sit back and curate an experience for people who play games. When
Mhm,
people think of game design, it's not about just how the game looks, but it's about the overall experience. My job as a game designer is to think of you as a player and say, what do you want to enjoy in this game? What would make this game good for you? And give you that good experience in the game. So, what are the kind of things I didn't have to look at if I'm going to give you a good experience?
mhm,
Well, I have to look at what are the rules of the game because if a game has horrible rules, you basically don't enjoy it. I have to look at things like, oh, the difficulty level,
mhm,
because if a game is sometimes too easy, you don't enjoy it. If it's too hard, you can't play it. I have to basically look at how are you going to play this game. If you're going to play it on your phone, then what are the things I have to do to adjust the game to a phone playing style? For example, imagine if you had to play Temple Run, right? Really popular game, and you could only play Temple Run with your mouse, right? Like this type of mouse that you hold and drag across your table.
mhm,
Thinking of it now, it might be a bit difficult, but because it's a phone game, it's easy, and now all you do is slide, right?
mhm.
There's a reason you're not moving the character in Temple Run with the volume buttons and you're moving them with your hand across the panel. That reason is the game designer. So that's basically what game design looks like.
Oh, so you guys are basically the UI UX of games.
No.
Oh,
And yeah, crazy thing because UX, yes. UI, not really, because most times the UI artist or designer in game design is like a separate role. And that's where game design and regular software
how do
creation or game
you
creation and
differentiate the design in the sense of I'm thinking about what, like the components of what the game should be, and then
Mhm.
actual. So taking Temple Run again as
An example.
yeah. So the person that thought of Temple Run, right? Okay, I want a game that you can run, you can like
Mhm.
run over obstacles, get
Mhm.
coins, whatever, right?
Mhm.
How do you separate that from the person that will actually probably like create the environment to which this happens, right? Or create
Mhm.
the kind of characters or the kind of barriers, right? Because it sounds like that
Mhm.
to me that you're saying that these two things are totally different.
But you just separated it when you were talking now, and that's the funny thing. You said one person talks about how they want the game to be, and one person creates the characters and the environment. The
Oh,
environment is separate from the concept. The environment is a manifestation of a concept. And that's the thing most people don't see with quote unquote UI UX designers. It's easy to hire somebody and the person is just a UI designer in your company. And you can hire somebody and the person is just a user experience designer. And when they are done, they flesh out this document and they hand the document over to the UI designer. And off of that, the UI designer creates some sort of look for the software. So one is more visual than the other. The other is about the concept and the user's interaction and the user's mind. The other one is about a visual representation
mhm.
of that user's interaction and how that will flow. So that's why it's UI/UX and it wasn't just called one thing. They're actually very separate.
Okay, thank you for that. Like, and like for everyone that's listening, which is just to see how complex and maybe how tasking it is, right? To think
Mm-hmm.
of because it's different because you need someone that thinks of the game, somebody that
Mm-hmm.
visually represents the game, and somebody that
Mm-hmm.
codes the game. three different
Mm-hmm.
eight different things, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
your stages, I am thinking of what the game is. Basically,
Mm-hmm.
that's what Dominion does. Is what I understand.
Yeah. So make it really simple. That yes, that's what basically game design should look like.
Okay, all right. I don't know if you've heard of deep mind technologies, right?
Mm, mm.
Or
So
yeah,
no, I don't think I have. Maybe if I have, I'm probably not just remembering it at the moment
okay. Like them is
because it sounds familiar.
yeah, it's just this kind of they use games to try and make AI better, right?
Oh,
So
okay.
they reinforce AI technology using I mean they're under alphabet now, right? Google. But
Okay.
anyways, I was just getting to the point. I was into a conversation with him, an interview, and he was just speaking of, he came as a chess person. First of all, do you play chess? Or did
Oh
you?
yeah, I do.
Why? Like there's always a correlation between gamers and chess, right? And like that's what as I was listening to you, I was like, when you even think of Gary Kasparov and Deep Blue, right? How
Hmm.
all of that unfolded, it's like deeply implemented in games. Is that I can even see the chessboard behind you. Excellent. Uh, deeply implemented in the creation of games is the constant need, right, to think about how chess works, right? I mean, now maybe not
Hmm.
so because that's like maybe gone beyond that, right? But as a first principles approach to the development of gaming, as a whole, right? It's kind of like the
Hmm.
complexities of chess, right, a board game, and maybe even
Hmm.
Go. I think there was another AI, right, whereby the game Go was created to defeat another human. But anyways, my point is like why is there such a correlation in your opinion, right? Now, especially because you play chess, right? Between this board game and then the actual games like in the real world.
It's because first of all, they are both the same thing. Let me put it that way. And it's not just chess, right? It spans even bigger than chess. It's all other board games. It's Dungeons and Dragons and all these other games. The thing is, before something is on a board or before it's on a screen, it's a game, which
Mm,
is why I said there's a very big difference between maybe the user interface aspect and then the experience aspect. All these things are experience. So whether I'm experiencing it with my friends sitting at the table and we are playing together over a board, or I'm experiencing it in my room on my desk and I have friends all over the world, we are still playing.
mhm.
So that's why they're all games. That's why there's always a connection, which is why there's this consistent transportation of the medium via which the game is experienced. Now, for example, you can play chess on your phone, the
Mhm,
same way you play on your board, and you still enjoy your chess game,
mhm,
right? Dungeons and Dragons, the board game, it's a board game, but
mhm.
if you look at it, it just feels like a slower version of most of the action games you experience every time with your friends. So all these things are mediums. You're not the actual game, so that's why they can easily be transported across.
Okay. So before we get to basically your role now as Carry1st, right? I think there was an event that happened, was it in Lagos or something recently? But
Oh yeah.
before we get to that, I just want to ask, like, how did you get, first of all, like, what did you study in uni? And like, how did you get interested in like gaming? Um,
No.
yeah.
So it's very wide. What I studied in university was actually geography and environmental management, right?
Oh.
So it was, yeah, geography and environmental management.
Okay.
Yes. And I did work professionally for a while with it. So about a year or less, slightly less than a year. But even while I was in the university, my interest in gaming as a profession came to me while I was in university. So I've always been a gamer. I enjoy playing games, but I then realized that
What
there was
kind
a
of games?
big difference between how games were like made and played and just experienced in the outside. I won't say the outside world. I'll just say in other parts of the world, like Europe and Northern America. There was a difference in how games were being played and experienced there, and how games were being played and experienced here. So I just went on this quest to sort of bridge that gap rather, to create a similarity between how we make games and how we play games both in Europe, North America, and all these other more developed regions, and Africa. So even when I was in university, I was already doing esports tournaments, getting people to compete. Started my first gaming initiative while I was in the university. So when I left the university and I was still doing other work like the environmental work, I was still at my gaming initiative. So that's why I've sort of always had a nudging to move into gaming as a career.
Yeah. What kind of games did you play like in uni? And what kind of games were played during the tournaments that you organized around those lines?
I think you can guess the easiest one, right? It's first of all soccer games, so football games, so FIFA and PAS, and then you can move on to like fighting games like Mortal Kombat, Injustice, Stormfall, Street Fighter. So those were like the most popular.
Oh, okay. And okay, so like you spoke about the gap between Nigeria and Europe, Northern America, basically in two stages, right? The consumer and then the producer, right? And and it sounds like we are more consumerist in this sense, right? We don't
Hmm.
produce, right? We just consume and we don't think about the production processes. And from what you're saying is your job is to create a producer aspect of the chain from here, right? Especially probably that will benefit us in the sense that more contextual, like COD, right? COD is a very, I don't know. COD is a very I used to play, I mean, I the only COD I finished, the Call of is Modern Warfare, right? I finished Modern Warfare 3.
Okay.
That was the only one I finished. But then like I mean, I understood, but then when you think about like who creates them, the companies behind them, right? Their
Hmm.
regions are, they have a deeply militaristic focus, like worldview, right? And maybe that influences
Hmm.
even how they create their games. So the question now becomes like, do you think that by your position, what might emerge is a situation whereby contextual games, right? I don't know, maybe a GTA of Lagos, like be very recreated, or like Aberos of Lagos or something like that. Is
I get you. I get you. That makes more sense. But yes, definitely, where you're from is always going to influence what you create, where you're from and what you always take in. And there is so much flavor to the African culture that if we can get an influence in games, it would be amazing. And that's already happening, by the way. So there was a company I interned with, a company called Twin Drums. It's a studio based in Berlin, but the founder is actually Ghanaian Italian, and they are building this game called the Wagadu Chronicles. And it's a game that is an open world game, but set in sort of a mystical form of Africa. So it's Afro fantasy. So
mm,
you know the way people
Wakanda.
take the idea of kings and queens and princesses and knights and all these things that existed in medieval Europe,
Yeah.
and then they form fantasy out of it. So now you have the magical king or magical queen and all these other things happening. And there are so many stories that we take in every day that are from those kind of fantasies, Snow White and the rest. That's what they are doing, but with African culture. So creating this fantasy world, but based off of actual African culture and law. And it's so amazing what's been built. If you just check out the Wagadi Chronicles, you'll see the amazing game that is being built by them. So yes, once we get the skill into gaming, we are able to create games that aren't only great to play, but also hold cultural relevance to something that seems more African.
Okay. As you were speaking, I was just thinking, of like how because there's a lot of storytelling at the end of the day, right? I mean, with the Wagado game that you just spoke of, right? So, how do you actually, what kind of storytellers in actuality do gamers want, right? Because I mean, you might, or are gamers themselves the storytellers, right? Is another point of view, right? So, do they work
Mhm.
people who actually create maybe novelists or whatever, right? Or do gamers just create the whole thing from scratch?
Um, so this is the thing about games, and this is where games are different from movies, right? Movies allow you experience a story that happened to someone else. But in most cases in games, what games give you is, even though the story is already curated, right?
Mhm.
For most games, though, you already know where the story is going to end. Even though it's already curated, it's a story that's happening to you. So when I'm playing a game like God of War and I'm playing as Kratos, I am Kratos. So all that's happening to Kratos
It's
is
me.
happening to me because I'm controlling Kratos and I'm winning, I'm losing, I'm fighting. And yes, the story is already curated and the story at the end is amazing. And I could watch the movie to get that story. But in most cases, what I am still going to experience, right? It is like a God of War movie, but what I'm still going to experience at the end of the day is something that's happening to me. So for most games, gamers just want you to tell a good story, but tell the story with them like they're a part of it.
So I want to play a movie. I don't want to watch it, more or less.
Something like that. It feels like that. It feels like you're actually playing a movie and you're being part of it. You are creating this as you go, but it's already curated for you in most cases by the game developers.
Okay, nice. So I just want you to talk about like Carry First. What is Carry First? Right. It sounds so Nigerian. Like is it Nigeria? Like Carry First.
Yeah,
Um.
the name was inspired. The name was inspired by Nigeria. So the CEO was
Oh.
in Nigeria for a while, and he was inspired by the culture, the slangs, and the name was inspired here.
All right. So what do you guys do at Carry First? What is the vision? What are the services or the products that you guys create?
So Carry1st is actually the leading publisher of social games and interactive content across Africa. So the mission and how we do it, for the mission, we basically want to bring interactive content to Africa. But on how we do it, we are helping international studios and local studios publish their games across the continent. So it's one thing to develop a game, it's another thing to publish the game. And most people don't realize this or don't understand it until you think of books and you think of Netflix. So when you see a book and the book has Macmillan written at the back, Macmillan didn't write the book.
Mhm.
Macmillan publishes the book. Somebody else probably wrote it and then takes it to Macmillan, and Macmillan enters a partnership with them because Macmillan has access to the book market, bookstores, bookshop can make books popular. Macmillan enters a partnership with most cases the author of the book, and then the book is published, and then people buy the book, and both Macmillan and the book author have some sort of agreement or whatever that is. So that's one side of what Carry1st does, but with games
Mhm.
across the African continent. And then the second thing is we also offer a shop called the Carry1st shop. So it's an online shop where you can purchase your daily essentials, digital essentials, by the way, not like you're buying bread or milk or something, but
Yeah.
like airtime, for example, power,
Mhm.
data, vouchers for your game. So these are the things you can buy from the shop, and then you pay for them with so many different payment methods, whether it's crypto or card or bank transfer. All these methods are available to you when you buy from the shop. So that's what we do.
Okay. So what's your role now in Carry First? Like what is your day-to-day function?
Hmm. In Carry1st, I'm actually the community manager and events lead. So my role engages two things. One, it's about engaging the gamers directly, building a community for these gamers, making sure that whenever they are in this community, they can interact with their fellow gamers and have a great time. But on the other side, it's also utilizing the power of events, both organizing and supporting events to build the company's brand and help the company meet certain goals.
Mm. Okay. Nice. All right. So in Nigeria, right, when it comes to like using the example that you use in the sense of you need a Macmillan and then the
Mhm,
author. So two questions as respect to the problems of this in Nigeria. Right? First of all, is the quote unquote authors, right? The people that think about games, right?
mhm,
So you need to write a book in this analogy, right, to actually get to
mhm,
publish one, right? So do we
mhm,
have people thinking about games, right? And
mhm,
obviously, like how good are they? And then the second aspect
mhm,
is like how hard is it for like people like Carry First, right, to partner with this kind of people? And what are the reasons why it's
mhm.
hard if it is hard?
Got it. So the thing is, yes, there are actually people who are making games, and it's not as many as it should be for the way we consume games, obviously, but there are people who are currently making games, me being one of them. So we make games and put games out there, and people sometimes play these games, and these games are available on the App Store. But what is important is based on the quality level, speaking to Nigeria specifically, we're not obviously where we want to be, but we are getting there. We are growing. It's a growing market and a growing industry. A lot of people are learning about it now and are putting their efforts to learn how to make these games and are becoming better each day. There are so many studios who are even already producing amazing games
Mhm.
out there. So it's a growing industry, and Carry1st is always open to working with gamers who are creating amazing games. I don't work in the publishing side per se, like engaging directly with these game studios, but at least from the little I know that we're always open to working with these studios, and I know that there are some studios who maybe aren't Nigerian but are African and are currently or have partnered with Carry1st before. So always open.
Okay. So there's no. So then the other question I asked, which is that what tends to make it difficult, right? Even if maybe Carrefour is open and there's somebody that's created a game, right? Like, is there difficulty, right, in connecting the two people in the sense that going back to book publishing, the
Mm-hmm.
problem can emerge, probably like in commission, in royalties, in basically how like cutting down of word counts, maybe, right, is too big, right? This part is irrelevant. So, like, how does all this in between processes occur,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like, is there also like policies guiding gaming in Nigeria to influence this interaction?
Oh, okay. So, based on policies guiding gaming that then stop us from interacting with these people, these what's it called, game developers, there is none at all. There is like zero. Our consistent efforts over the years is to be closer and closer to the markets, both on the side of the consumers and on the side of the developers and creators. So, based on technical hindrances per se, I don't believe there is any. I mean, if there are things in the game that quote unquote should be changed, I'm not exactly sure how that works. I'm sure that's something both publishers and the developers are able to figure out more
Mm-hmm.
consistently. But there aren't technical hindrances between Carry1st as a company and any of these studios. Games just can be received and vetted and looked at, and if they seem to be what is good and what works, then conversations move from there.
Okay. Nice. Then as a business, like the industry, um, how does it work, right? Basically what I was saying with probably like the royalties. So is it the same structure in the sense that for every game that is downloaded from us, or for every game probably like that somebody buys a token inside the game or something like that, right? You receive a payback, right? I don't know. Maybe you want to speak on that as well. Like, how does the gaming industry work as a business?
Yeah, altogether for the game industry, yes, I think that's basically how it works. So there are various ways people monetize games. There are scenarios where games have to be bought. So when you open the app store, it's not every game you can just download and begin to play. There are some games you have to pay for, and usually when that game is paid for, then maybe Google takes a cut, the developer takes a cut. If the game is being published, the publisher takes a cut, depending on whatever is agreed upon. Same thing happens in other kind of games that maybe you download for free, but you can pay for things in the game. When
Mm,
people then pay for these things, obviously, once again, everybody that is involved in the creation of that game take a cut. Another method is via ads. Some
mhm,
games don't make money from people buying things, but they make money because people come and give the game money and say, let's advertise ABC in the game
mhm.
while folks are playing. And then once again, the entire profit sharing scenario happens. And this is just the basic overview of how it works across the industry.
Okay, excellent. So I was just reading a bit about the gaming industry, like based on reports and based on people's perception about it, right? And there tends to be just a lot of focus on like the gambling sector, right, to control
Mm,
the game, right? And okay, first, my first question in this regard is, do you as a game a game designer, like, is it insulting to you to equate gambling, right, and like maybe casino, not in the sense of gambling in the derogative sense, right, as people say it, but in the
mm,
sense that it's luck, there's no story, maybe like it's a lot of if you own a casino, right, it's a business.
mhm,
Just that
mhm,
thinking thing that you have to you have to get money out of it. And so you have to tweak some
mhm.
things to be profitable, right, in the long run. So let me just ask you that first question. Like, what do you think of the overt focus on the gambling sector as equating the gaming industry in Nigeria?
Well, there was something that happened some years ago, and I think a lot of people have forgotten about this. But for a while, if you remember, most betting firms didn't exist in Nigeria again.
Yeah.
For a while before some other brands began showing up again, and that was because I think there was this crackdown and ban on casinos and you know gambling and betting firms and industries. What most people don't know is that that also severely affected the growth of the gaming industry on the gaming side. Why? Because when there was a crackdown on gaming altogether, it like our side of it was attributed to it. So we're cracked down on too. So most gaming houses like lounges where you go to with your friends and you play
Mm,
like PlayStation games
yeah.
together, those were closed down too. If you notice, they've sprung up again now, they're everywhere, but for a few years, they were nowhere to be seen. Only in very few and select areas like malls and the rest where it was fancy. But the other ones that were local, but in one way were also contributing to the growth of the industry, they were all shut down.
Mm,
So it's always a challenge trying to differentiate and making people know that these are two very different things. But what's happening now is they formed something called a criteria where it's either a game of luck or a game of skill. So there's now a chance to say, okay, I'm making a game. And then they ask you what kind of game. And then you say, oh, it's a game of skill. And they let you go on. Or, oh, it's a game of luck. And then they have to be more, interrogative to make sure it's actual luck or it's skill and all these things.
mhm.
So that's where the challenge is. It's usually challenging just differentiating and making people know that there's a difference, but it's always a problem when people don't get you and they think all you're doing is building, working with a casino or creating a betting platform.
Yeah. Okay. What do you think like is because I think I've also played like I'm a FIFA person. Like that's literally I think the only game I play, honestly speaking. Like before I used to play like much more in places. There was a point in my PS3, I had like 50 games, from all sorts of games, Assassin's Creed. I wasn't a Mortal Kombat person. But I played a lot of games and but I stayed with
Mm-hmm,
FIFA along the years. And I'm just thinking, like how do you break away in Nigeria from? Because when we talk about games, a lot of you go when a lot of people in gaming places, right? The stores, stores that you mentioned, right, are having
mm-hmm,
like playing games, right?
mm-hmm.
It's dominantly, like soccer driven. And even the soccer is like
Yeah.
really FIFA driven, right? So how do you
Mm-hmm,
think like we need to like the market in Nigeria can break away from this overt influence of
mm-hmm.
um, soccer games and maybe venture into adventure games or other kinds of
Mm-hmm.
games for you?
Well, I think there are levels to this question, to be very honest. But the first thing is the biggest and most important influence is the fact that soccer is the most popular sport in Nigeria or in Africa,
Mm,
right? So it only goes without saying that when people want to play games online, they will probably also lean towards that sport because it's the most popular and the most dominant sports. But on the side of gaming as itself, you have to realize that the market is very limited for what is available for these young people to play. And because it's very limited, most times people head towards where they get maximum outputs from minimal efforts.
mhm,
And in most cases, that is soccer. What do I mean by maximum outputs? There are different kinds of gamers, right? But most times, everybody has a mixture of about two or three different gaming qualities. So there's a competitor, the person who plays because he wants to win others. There's
mhm,
the achiever, the person who wants to reach new levels. There's also the social gamer, the person who plays just because they want to engage with other people, right? There's also the leisure gamer, the person who just plays because they want to relax. I think there's one more, but I'm currently not remembering it. The
Mhm.
truth is, at the end of the day, most times people circle around two or three of these,
Mhm.
right? And the only place or one of the few places where you can maximize most of these at the same time is in these soccer games. What do I mean? You get to play with others, so definitely you get to compete.
Mhm.
You get to also chill when you are playing, so there's some leisure to it. But you also get to achieve new levels of how well you can beat your friend or how well the person beats you,
Mm.
and there's the achiever. But while you are playing, you get to talk and gist and laugh. So there's the social gamer.
Mhm.
All of these come available in this game at the same time. It's not like other games aren't available for you to play, but it's just that in most cases you then feel, oh, before I spend X amount of money to go to the gaming lounge and pick up a pad, and then I'm playing a game on my own, like maybe the God of War or Assassin's Creed. It just feels like I'm missing out on the chance to do some of these other things like compete and also socialize. So that's why it's there are layers to this question, but truth is, I think we would get past it eventually as more games become open and people have the ability to purchase these games and have the kind of devices that can play these games. So we're already seeing that with games like PUBG, Free Fire, Call of Duty Mobile that are now on your mobile phone. So folks can do all these things again. They can compete, they can socialize over their phone and their devices. They don't have to get like a big PS3 and pay money for a PS5 before they can do any of those things. So with the inclusion of more devices and more games, well, it's fading away. But just the fact that FIFA is, or soccer rather, is the most popular sport, that already hangs a bar above everything else.
Nice. As we begin to wrap up, who do you think would be like the biggest pushers of this in the sense of moving the gaming industry in Nigeria forward, right? I mean, I know a lot of tech people and tech, I mean, coders, UI, UX. It tends to is like a starter pack in the sense of, like you code, you play mobile games, and then you watch anime. Right? It's just like a thing for them, like constantly, right? So, do you think
Guilty as charged for everything.
Oh yes, and it's not. It just tends to be a norm amongst this kind of people. So, do you think first of all that the breakaway in this sense for gaming is mobile phones, and then secondly, like, are these the people that maybe should be concentrated on to expand the markets, right, along the way?
Yeah, mobiles are definitely the breakaway, right? And that's something we at Carry1st as a company um, have realized a long time ago. But mobile is definitely the breakaway. If you look at it, I think over 90 or 85% of African gamers at least game on their mobile phones. So they
Wow.
can also have a PS5, they can also have a PC that can game, but the phone is always a constant with games in it, right? Even though Africa is the youngest continent in the world, we don't have the highest purchases for things like PS5s and all these other games online. Why is that? Because it's expensive for us in our economy. But you know what we still buy, no matter what, we buy phones. And these phones can run some games. So the only thing that can lead the breakaway is the games on our phones because they're the only things we can then find a way to route and include everyone into. There's some exclusion because of big and expensive devices like a PlayStation console, an Xbox console, a gaming laptop. But most times with phones, even though there could be an exclusion based on the fact that my phone runs the game better than yours, we can all run this game. So that's why mobile will always lead the breakaway.
All right. Okay. As we just close, what is as a game designer, what is your dream? Personally speaking, right? Maybe
Hmm.
in the company you want to work for, or in the kind of games you want to create. Like, what is your dream? Maybe like
Hmm.
you're not even thinking of Nigeria, but like if it's Nigeria, that's cool. And then, what is your Nigerian dream as well? Like, not gaming wise, but just generally speaking.
Hmm. Hmm. So on the gaming side, game design wise, one thing I always would be happy to do is use games for social impact, right? I just don't want to make a game that people love, but I want to at some point create a game that incentivizes people to do some sort of social good. good, right?
Is there a game
And
that you know that is like that now?
also, of course, there are lots of games that impact the world in different positive ways. I remember during the COVID period, I think it was a gaming studio in Switzerland, or I know it was in Europe, and they created this game that was created that basically made people feel like they were in this spaceship and they were scientists in a lab, and their goal was to spot out certain odd figures. But what they were actually doing was they were actually helping to run COVID-19 tests on people without knowing. And they were spotting bacteria or something, of virus or something of that sort,
Mm,
over samples that were being delivered from people who were tested in the lab. They knew that was what they were doing, but in the game, it didn't look like that was what they were doing. And so many people participated because they were doing some sort of social good, but they were still having fun. And I think it ramped up to the speed at which either results were being produced or a vaccine was being produced. One of them, I'm not sure the specifics of the story. All I know is that the game was aiding the fight against COVID, right?
mm,
So that's an example. There are also games that help people learn how to spell or learn how to speak, and people play these games all the time. That's a social good, right? So I'm just imagining a game that trends, that people enjoy because it's a fun game in itself, but the aftermath and the impact of that game is something that is positive in society. So that's a dream for me. That's something I want to be able to do. It takes a lot of design work and human psychology, but it's always possible.
all right.
Um, hmm. On the side of my Nigerian dream, oh, I hope next year turns things around. I mean, I don't want to become political and start naming people and places and parties and the rest. But all of us that know that there is only one possible route we can go if we actually want to turn Nigeria around next year. So I hope we do go that route, and I hope we change things for the better. It may be difficult, but it's not impossible.
Mm,
And I just hope the entire scenario of voter apathy dies and continues to die. It's about 8 months of the election. That's a long time. But voter apathy needs to die if we're going to change things. Because at the end of the day, all the evil that happens because there is space, and that space is voter apathy. So, yeah, that's my dream.
that space is voter party. Thank you so much, Dominion, for your time today. Thank you for telling us a bit about Carry First, right, and just what you guys are doing, and like you as a game designer, and I'm sure like somebody
Hmm.
gaming, I'm sure all the tech bros, probably this is the podcast will come to, most likely. So thank you for your time once more, and I wish you luck, success, and the funds to create the social games, right? Because I know gaming requires so much money to create
Hmm.
cost wise. So yeah, thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you very much. It's been amazing being here, and just thanks for having me.
Yeah, nice.